because we didn't need to record all of the welcoming chit chat, but we wanted to record these sessions because the next several sessions we're going to be talking about all of the new job descriptions. So each of your conference staff members, so Tracy, make yourself a note, all of your conference staff members will be talking about their new and updated revised job descriptions, and we can have some conversation about who does what and why and how. And we're spending the next several months just sort of settling into these new jobs and figuring out how they work and trying to communicate as best we can throughout the conference about how we're trying to work more effectively and efficiently to serve our local churches in ways that they're stronger together. That's really the core of the focus of everything that we're doing. So today you get to hear about the conference minister's job. It's similar to how it's been before, but there were a couple modifications that we put in place because we're like, who's going to do that? Molly, that's who gets to do that. So if it's all right with you, I'll share my screen where I just have the print. I didn't get fancy and create a job description. I just I didn't get fancy and make it into a PowerPoint. I just made a job description, and it's not this one. Sorry, you can look at my calendar later. Let me check it. I know it's there. So then we can just have some casual conversation, I hope. I want to point out some of the things that are different from what was here before. This is the general job description for a conference minister. I happen to be called to this position at this time. There are a couple of key categories here. The conference minister is a spiritual leader, including the public square. I represent the conference in many ways publicly. I work with the council and other key leaders about discerning a vision for the conference. I try to engage as many folks as possible across the conference in mission and ministry. And I'm out and about preaching. So if you haven't had me out to preach, my calendar is sort of flexible. Usually I'm booked about 3 months out. So if you're wanting me to come to your church and preach, I'm really happy to do that. Right now, there's some additional COVID concerns, and so we work with that the best we can. I hope you're finding ways to honor the surge with at your congregation. But I do schedule several months out, so if you want me to come, invite me, and that's how you get me there. The other big part of my job is I work with all the governing bodies of the conference. That includes the, particularly I serve actually, where a local church pastor is often not an actual member of the board. The way our Constitution reads, the conference minister is an actual voting member and an officer of the conference council and executive committee. I also serve ex officio with vote on a bunch of committees and without vote on a few committees. So I work with a lot of committees. I also work really closely with the council president, the treasurer, and other council members. And that shifts around a little bit depending on, in terms of who I spend most time with, depending on the focus of the things that are going on in the conference. There have been seasons when I've worked with Carol Currier Forgetto a whole lot on personnel stuff. I meet with David Holston every Monday afternoon. And I worked a lot with Ernie Ernie Potter as a treasurer over the last year. There have been times when I've worked more with association representatives that serve on council. So sometimes those move around who I'm working with a lot during a season, depending on what it is that I'm really focused on. A new thing is I will be the primary contact that works with all 5 of the association councils. It has been designed for, it has been functioned for years that the association minister, which became the associate conference minister, serving particular associations, has served as the liaison with the association councils. But this coming year, for a couple reasons. One, the ACM jobs are really restructuring, and they're moving to conference-wide responsibilities and trying to figure out how to distribute things with very, very full plates. The other reason is I want to be closer to our membership and our churches. And working with the association councils is one step to make that a little bit closer and a stronger relationship. We may choose at a time in the future to rearrange that, but for beginning the first of the year, that's a responsibility that I'm picking up. I've been working with Fox Valley and Eastern for a little while, since Kim Wood left, but I'm now going to be working with all 5 of the association councils. I'm kind of excited about that. I also have responsibilities to ensure that we have policies and procedures and that we follow them, and as well as our other governing documents. So many conversations I'm having over the last several months have pointed to our next big project. You all know that we spent my first 18 months or so really digging in deep and working on cleaning up our financials. We need to do about the same depth of work with regard to our governance structure. Taking a look at our constitution and bylaws, our association covenant agreements. We're working on personnel policies right now. We've worked on financial policies and procedures. So really getting a lot of those ducks in a row are going to be the next major focus of my ministry. However, I feel like it's the way I've described it to folks is it feels like that's the freight train that's pushing down the tracks behind me. And I'm like, no, we're holding it back because we really need to take a little time to get our staff acclimated to the new work, make sure everyone in the conference knows who to call about what and when, and what services do we offer, how do we function, all those sorts of, how do these people that we pay their salaries for, what do they do? I know becomes a question at the local church as well.
Yes, this is Harlette calling you back.
Harlette,
okay.
I can mute. I'm sorry. I could mute. I didn't realize I had the power to do that. Just sort of the local church pastor works more than just a couple hours on Sunday morning, right? Your staff are doing things when we're not on the phone or in your congregation. There's a broad spectrum of things that we do. Another major category of my work is overseeing the financial health, transparency, and good stewardship practices of the conference. I serve on a bunch of committees. Any committee that has to do with money, I'm on it. That's one of my, that's just one of the things that's in my portfolio. I represent the Illinois Conference with external partners, all sorts of them. I participate regularly in the national setting of the United Church of Christ with the Council of Conference Ministers. All the conference ministers are part of the Insurance Board of Directors. So if you have questions about the Insurance Board, give me a call. I'll do my best to help you out. I get answered. I can get my questions answered, put it that way. I'm really, really integrally involved in General Synod and in other settings as appropriate. Right now, I am serving a term, and I'm not even sure how many years my term is. It's maybe 2, maybe 4 on the UCC board as a conference minister representative on the board of directors for the national setting. Also, by nature of my role, I have an automatic seat on several boards of directors for Covenant Partners, including Advocate Aurora, Community Renewal Society, Greater Chicago Broadcast Network, School for the Ministry. I'm probably forgetting some. They just, everything just comes up on my agenda and I'm like, okay, I'm going to that meeting today. So I'm involved and represent the conference in several of these settings. Also in ecumenical and interfaith settings throughout Illinois. My colleagues as bishops or other judicatory executives will call me to do judicatory checks, or we are involved. There's some different organizations that gather for justice work or for other ecumenical and interfaith work. And so I represent the conference in those settings. My current biggest focus is this other responsibility as head of staff. We've had so much staff turnover and transition with all new job descriptions. And so you'll be hearing a lot about that. I'm really focusing a lot of my hours in my day on staff development over the next 6 months. I'm a trained coach, which some of you may or may not know. And I will be offering each of the ACMs an hour of coaching every week, and each of my support staff an hour of coaching twice a month. I also have a meeting once a week with the MLT, which is the ministry leadership team, which is the ACMs and I, with once a week with the support staff, which are the office staff there in Westchester, once a month with the camp directors. And as we hire new staff for the TPIRC program, there will certainly be a more intensity of engagement with those. I'm also the funnel through which all of our concerns that we have retained and identified legal counsel for the conference. So all the work that he does for it, that's Mark Harris. All the work that Mark does for us all funnels through me. I also work directly with Keith Clark Hoyos, who is our accountant bookkeeper, and oversee his work. And so bringing the different groups of folks together, we have quarterly full staff meetings. We have once a month, the Monday morning MLT meeting includes finance, TPIRC, and we'll start to include the camp directors starting this year too. So that's an awful lot of meeting time, and but it's really important to help with this transition to all new staff. You know, there's a lot of moving parts and a lot of and it's not all new staff, but it's all new job descriptions. Which change things up, and it just takes a minute to settle into. And I understand it takes a minute for all of you to figure out how you work. I'm also responsible for personnel files and annual performance reviews and policies and procedures and those sorts of things. We have an awesome team from the personnel committee that is working on updating the policies and procedures, and they have put in, I'm not even going to try to guess how many hours have been put into it. And Mark, you're going to save your voice and not make your guess either. It's just a lot. Mark is on that team.
You don't want to know. I'll shut up again. You don't want to know.
Save your voice. The other real focus for me is to really nurture teamwork. And that is nurturing teamwork across the staff, as well as through the wider church, and in engagement with the elected leadership of the conference, that we're moving as a team forward, that it's not the elected leaders and the staff as siloed, and that we're really figuring out ways that we're connected. So a big part of my job is that networking and connection and nurturing those connections, and in all different levels and contexts. So that's what's written on the job description. That doesn't reflect necessarily all of the day-to-day stuff. I won't stop sharing. so we can have a little bit of conversation. There are probably some things on there that you're like, I had no idea the conference minister did that. And other things on there that aren't on there that you're like, I thought the conference minister did this other thing, but who's doing that? Why isn't it getting done? Or we had hoped that this would be part of our expectations. So I'd really love to open up some conversation and invite your questions, your thoughts, your concerns, your curiosities. What have you got for me?
I'd like to know, this is Bob Hempel. I'd like to know when you have time for relax or fun.
Thanks, Bob. I have really made a commitment to take care of myself. I've not made any secret of the fact that I have MS, and if my stress or fatigue get too high, I'm going to get really sick, and you're not going to have me at all. So I have to do things to manage my exertion and my care. I commit to taking 2 days off a week. They are marked on my calendar as Thursdays and Fridays. On the weeks when something conflicts, like this Friday, we're having the first half of our board retreat. So I rearrange. I have some rules. I am allowed to move them on my calendar to another week with another day within the same month. They don't just get to roll over indefinitely, but it's like I need to be taking that time. I have found for my personal well-being that I do better if I have full days off where I can just wake up all the way to going to sleep and engage minimally with work. I'm not checking my email. I am available sort of on call. David Holston can get through to me. I answer his calls. Naomi from the office, I will answer her calls. And Terrell and Kathy, the ACMs, know that they can get me if it's something urgent, and I'll usually respond pretty quickly, especially to text. Send me an email on Thursday and Friday. I probably won't see it before Saturday. Wednesday night's also a tricky time to send me an email because once I shut down my computer on Wednesday night, it's off. I also really try to, I have some evening meetings, but I try to protect that time and try to eat with my family or watch TV, do normal family evening things there too. So I really do. And I have a pastoral relations committee that helps keep me accountable to my own goals around that. Thanks, Bob. Penny.
Okay, so Molly, what do you like best about serving the Illinois Conference and all our churches?
I actually love this job. This is what I feel like God made me to do, gifted me, prepared me, the paths along the way. I love how it's hectic and crazy, and there's something new every day. I love that it's spiritually grounded and that I'm called upon for visioning as well as implementation, sort of the balance of these things. I'm always surprised. There rarely is a day that I'm not surprised by something, whether it's a call from somebody that it's like, wow, that's maybe asking for my advice. And I'm like, wow, I never thought of that. So let's think through that together, to working with such fantastic staff and watching the amazing ministries that are happening across the conference, even through the ups and downs of those. That I can be a presence and an influence on those ups and downs is really gratifying to me.
Molly, this is Dan Sather.
Hi, Dan.
Hi there. I'm particularly interested right now on a committee on ministry concern Mainly that, how you're connected with that, because I know in the past you've done the conflict group, you've pulled that together. I am in particularly at the Chicago Metropolitan Association. We've had several, and they've moved very slowly through the process. And I understand that that's because there's really not a team there, and that you were interviewing people to make that happen. Where are you in that process? Because I think that's an area that is really needing some attention.
Yes, and thank you. And what Dan's talking about specifically is the fitness review process. So when we're faced with a question of clergy misconduct, the Committee on Ministry is for the association that pastor serves in or has their standing in. That Committee on Ministry reviews what's called a blind case. So we take the names out, but we present a situation, and the committee determines whether or not it's a question of fitness. And fitness is a question of whether or not the clergy, if the story that has been told or the complaint that has come is true, has the clergy person broken their code of conduct, broken their ethical requirements, ethical standards. So when that happens, there's then, if the Committee on Ministry says yes, there's a formal process. It's very specific, and it's so specific because of it's developed for the whole UCC nationally, based on history of going through litigation around some issues. And it's our way of protecting our churches and our clergy around issues like what the Catholic Church has dealt with sexual misconduct of priests. So I just want to put some perspective there, Dan. I know you know all of that stuff.
Yes, thank you.
And yeah, so this really specific process gets initiated when someone raises a concern. The Committee on Ministry says yes, and then it moves forward. How we've done it in the conference in the past is that we have a unified fitness response team, and each association nominates people to be on that, or elects people to serve on that committee, and there are co-chairs. And Chuck Maney here's on call. He and Lori Reed have been the co-chairs for a while, did a fantastic job under really difficult circumstances. We're estimating that we maybe had 1 fitness review in the last 10 years and 7 in 2021. I blame COVID. You know, there's just chaos in our system, stress just beyond belief, pressures on our clergy, and there's no one type of issue that's coming up. The variety of situations that are emerging or that are brought to our attention would surprise you. You'd be like, oh my gosh, you got a call about that? And I'd say yes. And we all know that when we work under stress, that's when we are most likely to succumb to doing inappropriate things. I know even at home, when I'm stressed, that's when I'm going to yell at my kids, right? I don't want to yell at my kids. It's not right to yell at my kids. I learned when they were toddlers, I redirect them first, right? Yeah, when I'm really, really stressed, there's no redirection happening. There's just mom yelling, right? But I keep my flip-flops out of the picture, right? But this is a reality. And yet we can't have our clergy, we have a standard that our clergy need to live up to. That all said. Because there have been so few in the past, the makeup of the response team hasn't always been made up of folks that can jump in and know the procedures, know the process, and come in and get it done. So I'm really aware that we need to do some work to restructure that. Part of the ACM restructuring and why we have one ACM working on with all of the committees on ministry is to partially to address the inconsistencies of our fitness response process. Kathy Laws will be the ACM working with committees on ministries, and she's already getting that ball rolling. We have new co-chairs. We thank Chuck so much for his service and are trying our best to allow a graceful retirement from that role. He has offered to work with our new co-chairs, who are Bob Talich from Western Association and Renito Ward from CMA. They'll be the co-chairs of that fitness response team. And we'll need to do some recruiting for the members of that team. We're even looking at the possibility and exploring the possibility of creating a full fitness review team, period, so that it's only the initial decision would go through the committee, the association's committee on ministry, and then it would be referred in its entirety to their fitness response team. But that's got to be a step down the road. We need to do some recruiting and very specialized recruiting, and for that team, when folks aren't working on it for 10 years, when they don't have a review to work on, they lose those skills or the memories of how that process works, and it is so darn specific. When these reviews came up, there were not trained folks available in that pool that were ready to step in and be able to do those steps. There's a process guide, there's folks that go and do the interviews. And so it's been, in my estimation, one of those situations when you're sitting in the association saying, okay, we've got 14 seats to fill, who can fill these seats? And we need to do some, particularly in this area, really need to do some more focused skill identification and recruiting folks for less for the general committee-ness of it, but for skills to be on call when fitness review emerges. The question came out in my collect with the Council of Conference Ministers: how long does a fitness review in your conference average? How long does it take? And most conferences were saying, oh, 4 to 6 months or so. One conference said their average was 6 weeks. And I said, wow, that's a best practice that I want to know about. Ours are lasting over a year, and it is unacceptable. It puts churches, communities, individuals' lives on hold. It is unfair and unacceptable. And figuring out how to move forward is one of those knots we're working to undo. Does that help?
Yeah, are you going to be, are you or Kathy going to be recruiting those people to put together the team, and how soon is that going to be happening?
Kathy will be working with the, I have helped recruit the chairs. So now we have new chairs. We'll be working on how we're going to recruit the leadership to participate in those. And it may be that we're doing some training specific to each fitness review that's underway right now. Just trying to get the active ones resolved before we can sort of, as we work on fixing the overall system. I think there's 2 levels there. One's immediate and one's we've got to do some system overhaul.
Okay.
Regina?
Hi, Molly, and hi, everyone. What is the criteria for a person that's serving on the fitness review team? I think if everyone knows that, then some people might step up to do that.
Yeah, I think we haven't clarified that, and I'd really like to see a very specific job description. Some of the folks with skills in their professional lives that could be very, very helpful: attorneys, social workers, anyone who does maybe a journalist, because part of the question is extracting the story and documenting the story from different points of view. So then it can be reviewed by the Committee on Ministry, and adjudication can be determined. So I have found that in many cases, we have a lot of clergy on this committee, and some clergy might have the perfect skills for it. Clergy tend to lead with their heart, though, and want to feel bad for everybody. And there's nothing wrong with that. We need those people, but not in the fact gathering, fact documentation. There's a detachment there that some other folks often have stronger skills. But that's something we'll be working on, and Kathy will be working on. John, I see your hand.
Thanks, Molly. I'd like to hear you talk a bit more about the conference minister's accountability to the governing structures. You kind of passed by that quickly. And I don't mean, are you getting along with folks of the conference council? Over these months, it's appeared that you and David certainly have had a nice, close, comfortable relationship. But what are the, I'm only guessing here, but I think some of the issues that you may be faced when you got here were related to oversight issues that did or didn't happen over the past years from governance. And so what are the procedures? What are the protocols? How do you understand your accountability? And how is the conference council being equipped and trained to carry that out effectively?
Thank you. That's an excellent question. It was built into my letter of call that I had a 6-month and an annual review led by, according to our Constitution, it's initiated and led through Personnel Committee, but it's also been, we really integrated the executive, the officer team this year. And so I had a 6-month and an annual review, and there's a commitment to have, and those happened on time. And there will be an annual review every year going forward. There's a real commitment to that. There's no question in my mind that I work for the council and not the council works for me. And we work for as much as possible within those boundaries in a real sense of teamwork, that we're in this together and in for the best work of the conference overall. I have responsibility to oversee a lot of things, and then the governing body is overseeing me and all of those things. So many things I might be working on in the background, but the buck stops at the governing body.
I'm going to break my silence for a moment.
Okay.
As a member of personnel, as a member of council, and as the vice chair of personnel, the personnel group that's working on the policies has been working on trying to make some clearer lines of responsibilities. So there is always a place where the buck extends beyond Molly, which makes the governing body the final voice in things. And we have been kind of consciously doing that as we seemingly endlessly struggle with personnel policies. And I will shut up again.
Yeah, on personnel policies, we're definitely doing that. And that's part of the governance structure that needs to be addressed. There are levels and levels and levels of questions that come up with regard to the governance structures. And that's certainly one of them. Thanks, John. You have a follow-up?
I think you might want to consider in your job description specifically naming a responsibility for helping train the governance structure, particularly the council, on their responsibilities. Because in my experience, when things are going, when there's a crisis moment, as we've had, folks stand up and realize they've got a major responsibility, and they've got to be very attentive to a level of detail that is significant. But once things are kind of rolling and moving along and feeling comfortable and there's no sense of crisis, it's easy to take the eye off the ball and kind of leave it up to the conference minister and assume things are fine. So kind of the ongoing nurture of the governing body's understanding of its role and providing training and equipping, I think, is a really important role. And it's not likely to happen unless you're pushing for that.
Thank you for that. I'm attentive to the need for any executive director or chief executive of a nonprofit to prioritize board development. And I have pushed to have 2 board retreats a year. The first one sort of an onboarding one, and the second one some sort of development. So this weekend, Friday and Saturday, we'll have a review of the fiduciary responsibilities and the general responsibilities of a board of directors. But that's an excellent thought that should actually be written into my job description.
Molly, can I say something too, please?
Yeah, David, please.
First of all, John, thank you for your comments. I do want to respond that Molly and I have a blunt and professional relationship. I've never thought of it as cordial, but I'll take that into consideration next time we talk. We have some very blunt conversations on Mondays, and it's without going into specifics because this is not the time for that. Some of those conversations, a lot of those conversations are around governance and what we're doing and what we can do, what we should be doing. The FAB committee this last 6 months has put forth a brand new policies and procedures manual that will be reviewed initially in December or November, excuse me, at the last council meeting, and we're going to continue to review it and should adopt it within the next 60 days on the council. Property committee, a newly formed meeting in the last year, has made a lot of progress toward what we're doing in the property area. The personnel, as already was mentioned, is working on new policies. This new realm system that we're putting in has helped us to begin to tally who we actually are. And in doing that, one of the things that we're finding, and Molly doesn't like it, again, this is part of our blunt and professional relationship when I say some of these things, but one of the things we have found is that we're not 244 churches strong. We're about 217 churches strong, and maybe even a couple less than that. So we're doing some things, but we also recognize there is much to do in the next 12 to 24 months relative to governance and how we look at our structure as a conference, and some work has to be done. That type of work is typically done in the council level started, but there's going to be, we've had some discussions, there's going to be some work being done on that. And even today, I was having discussions with individuals that we'd like to put together to help us look at the Illinois Conference and what our structure for the future should be. It's high on the priority list for everybody. We don't talk about it publicly as much because there's 50,000 different opinions on what we should be doing. But we're well aware of the fact that we need to be making some changes and making it soon. So thank you for bringing that up, John.
And I want to be clear, I've been very impressed with the level of work that the council and Molly have been doing over these last months. My concern is that we maintain that intensity of attentiveness moving forward.
Yeah, thank you for that. So Brett asked about getting a pulpit supply list. Naomi is the right place to go. Another comment that I see in my chat is asking about the boundary awareness training that's happening this year. For those of you who are needing it or curious about it, I have offered to, and the committees on ministries have, all 5 of them have graciously agreed to allow me to offer a one-day boundary awareness training based on the Ordained Ministers Code. I will be offering it quarterly And so Sarah will be putting out those dates. The first date is January 20, Saturday, the 20 something. I think it's the 29th. 29th. Terrell's giving me the hand motions. So each of those, the January is going to be on Zoom. It would be nice if we could have one not on Zoom later in the year, but I'm not sure that's going to be possible. I have options on weekdays and I have options on weekends. It's a 6-hour training and you must be present for the whole thing to get credit for it. But hopefully I've got a picture in my head of how I want to have my boundaries, how I want to attend boundary training, how that might look. So we're going to try it out, and I'll gather feedback from those who attend. So those are coming up, and there will be 4 options for dates in this year. There may be, the committees on ministry are the ones that authorize the boundary trainings. And so they could very well have other offerings led by other leaders throughout the year as well. There will not be a charge for the training. Except I'm paid through the OCWM. So the indirect cost is make sure your church is supporting OCWM.
Do you all realize that we're going on 18 months now of Zoom meetings? I've been conference president for 18, almost 19 months, and yet to been able to see anybody in person.
Yeah, we haven't had any in-person meetings.
I can't wait to hug some of you.
It's really been weird starting this new job as conference minister, and I've been in fewer churches than I would normally be. And then also just, I can't hug anybody. And, this is all started. I know so many people in 2D. I meet people, I'm like, oh, that's what you look like in 3 dimensions. Kirsten.
Hey, everybody, Kirsten Peachy from Advocate Aurora Health. So I just want to say, number one, as a covenantal partner, just how important it is to have the Illinois Conference Minister on our, serving on our governance structure, on our board for the Advocate Healthcare side. It really is important to have that representation, and really have appreciated Molly's presence and input there. It's been a really good partnership. And it means a lot to us as an organization. The other question I had for you, Molly, was, there's the sort of the proclamation part of your job. I was curious about how you do that, how and where you do that, and how and where you decide how to do that on behalf of the conference. And just some of your reflections on that aspect of your role, because obviously there have been a lot of things to proclaim about. There always are, but it just seems like, especially in the last couple of years. So just curious about that.
Well, on the justice side, I'm guided by the resolutions passed by the Illinois Conference in terms of signing on with amicus briefs or with being engaged in justice work on behalf of the conference, or talking to media or anything like that. I'm guided by the actions that the conference has made in the past. In terms of being in the local church and proclaiming a good word there, I mostly have been led by invitation. I'm invited places, or there is an event that I might also be there for, an installation, or I'm representing the conference in some other way, maybe a service of release or something like that. And then I bring at least a word of greeting. And when I've been invited, I have been preaching. And Carly posted, try preaching to an empty sanctuary. I've done that many times. preached to an empty sanctuary with a camera in front of my face, which to be part of a virtual service. So I also try to provide written stuff, either in the e-blast or in special letters or newsletter articles or something. I try to make those less routine and more specific. So not every e-newsletter will see Molly's musings article, but if something's going on, I will speak to it, and that will be communicated through the various channels that we have for communication. You'll also hear from me at meetings. I'm involved in a lot of meetings, and certainly annual celebration. It's important to hear my voice and such as well. But again, on the justice side, I'm guided by the actions that the conference has taken, and there are probably some new ones that we need to sort of reinitiate some activity around some resolutions that the conference might be taking speaking as a body. I can probably take one or maybe two more questions. What have you got for me?
Molly, can I put in a plug?
Sure.
Since we have 40-some people on the call, roughly 40 people on the call, just be aware that we're still looking for a treasurer for the Illinois Conference. We have not found anybody yet. We're trying to be intentional about finding the right person, and we'd love to find somebody who is different than us over 70 people that all we serve. We'd love to find somebody who's younger, but really, quite frankly, at this point, we have nobody. Ernie Potter agreed to serve for 90 days after the annual meeting, so he will serve through February, but he would love to finish sooner. So if you know of somebody, please contact me by email or my phone number, which I'll put in the chat in just a second, or Eric Quinny Bernard, who's the nominee and chair. And we would like to find some help and have somebody help us find the right person. Thank you.
So a piece about my point of view, if I was working in an office, I'd have an open door policy. And I would welcome you to stop in or give me a call or whatever. That's still true remotely. If you have questions or you want to sit and talk with me about something, I was hoping that I could start offering coffee dates, but maybe not quite yet. I'll bring my coffee and we'll look at each other on the screen. I have a Zoom account. We'll schedule a time to chat. We're updating some of our technology tools. So I was using a calendaring software called Calendly, which would allow, I'd give you a link and you could go in and you could see when I'm available. But that's not working right now during some of our transitions. So I'm going to get that fixed. And so it makes it easy for you to just go on the signature line of all of my emails. Send me an email, I'll send it back. I'll send you the link so that you can schedule a time to talk with me. I'm really happy to talk with any of you about whatever's on your mind. It's how I know and stay connected with what's going on. So I really value the interpersonal relationship development opportunities that come with some of those one-on-one or small group gatherings. So I really hope to continue to keep myself to be available to have those kinds of conversations. So feel free to reach out, and I'd really like to see how that happens. Make that available. Kirsten, is your hand still up? I see Dan's is up. Okay, Dan?
Yeah, yes. I know that our person, the third association minister is not on board yet. Do I understand that that is just more of an interim thing? It's not necessarily going to be permanent? Is that
Yes.
my understanding? Okay. All right. Well, I mean, I'm sure you all do too, but I do have some concerns about that with the workload that's already on our association ministers and you, Molly. But I understand that the reason why, and I guess I prayerfully hope that it becomes more of a permanent position than temporary.
I do too. There are a couple of reasons why it's a 12 to 18 month position. The first of which is we're in the midst of a transition, and we knew that we would be, we were posting the job before we'd even affirmed the new job descriptions, and we're trying things out in an experimental mode. It's tricky to then codify that into a permanent position. Anyway, the other major reason is we do not know in a year to a year and a half if OCWM, or we do not find other sources of income, or OCWM doesn't bounce back to a reasonable level, we will not be able to afford 3 associate conference ministers, and we'll have to revision again. My job description will obviously change, and the job descriptions for associate conference ministers will have to change. And I believe that when you're running a member-funded organization, you need to let your members know what they're about to lose if the funding doesn't line up. And so this is an opportunity to be really transparent and real with each other. That 99% of our income comes from our church's wider mission, comes from OCWM. And for churches that are not able to or choose not to contribute to OCWM, we just, that's how you vote, right? You vote with your dollars in this way and say, this is the support that is needed to help our churches thrive, help our local churches be stronger because they're part of the UCC. And there's an expectation there that the conference and national staff can provide support and services to help those outcomes that we want. But we can only stretch the dollars as far as they can stretch. And so this is a year of just being real with ourselves, of saying, this is what it takes to have 3 ACMs. And 3 ACMs and a conference minister, 1 conference minister is half the professional staff we had 10 years ago. Mm-hmm. And the reality is we'll have to cut in a year and a half if we aren't able to fund it. It's just not sustainable. So that's a really harsh reality. And so it has nothing to do with Stephanie. We think she's great. We're so excited to have her come on board. And we're moving forward, assuming that we will have the money to continue 3 positions. Now, that's how we're implementing this role, and that's how we're implementing Carol and Kathy's new portfolios and how we're moving forward. But it's always in the back of our mind that the reality is we have to bring in the dollars to match the expenses. Notice I didn't say to match the mission, because the mission's even bigger than what we have. You have to fund within, you have to spend within what you actually are making. So. Well, I want to thank you all for coming today and hearing this part. Over the next several weeks, we're going to continue on Wednesday afternoons to introduce each of the different positions, review the job descriptions, and have some conversation so that you all are as clear as possible about who does what and how things are unfolding, and can address your questions. And it's just helps us be clear of how we're able to work best together. I forget Molly, who's, oh, yes. Mark.
Yeah, it's me breaking my rules again. You may want to make a bigger deal and maybe even a larger size notation that since the hiatus, the link and the entry code to this have changed. I mean, I
Okay.
had those in a regular reoccurring meeting notice, and I had to go back and find the new one today, and other people may have a similar problem.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Mark. I'll make sure that message
Sure,
gets
Mark.
to Naomi. I'll make sure that message gets to Naomi and to Sarah.
Bob Hempel here.
Bob, hi.
Okay, two things. One, I was part of the Veterans of the Church and Ministry long work that we did, and it was like some days it was one trial in particular was like digging ditches, 8 hours. And I support you, and my heart and blessings are always with you. And number two, I'll be glad to help in any way I can with my talents in any way possible for the conference with limited basis. And also, before I sign off, I'd like to invite everybody. One of my retired colleagues, Ozzie Smith, is preaching on the Old Protestant Hour, Day 1, this weekend. And his title of his sermon is "Come and Get It" from John's Gospel. And you can get it on podcast at day1.org or on by listening on some radio station. I think a few of FM stations around Decatur or Peoria have the carry Day 1. So that, and I'm really happy, and I'll continue to be on here. I had to switch from the iPad to iPhone when my iPad quit working.
Thanks, Bob. I'm so glad you could be with us, and I hope folks can find Ozzie's sermon. That sounds like a good one. Taylor, Kathy, do you know who's scheduled to come next week? No. Well, watch your emails because it'll be out there. Grateful for all of you. I'm so grateful to be in ministry with you and to be working to support the churches that are affiliated with the United Church of Christ and located in northern 2/3 of Illinois. God is doing great things with us and has great things ahead for us. So blessings on your day. Stay healthy and warm. And we'll see you next week.